The millionaire invited the black cleaning lady as a joke, but she arrived like a diva and everyone was in absolute shock when they found out who she really was. The main hall of the Blackwood mansion in Beverly Hills exploded with malicious laughter when Victoria Sterling descended the marble staircase wearing a dress that cost more than the annual salary of most of the people present. It wasn't laughter of admiration, it was pure cruel mockery. "Look who decided to show up," Richard Blackwood whispered to his guests, raising his glass of Dom Perignon champagne. "Our dear cleaning lady." Victoria was 35 years old and never imagined she would ever step foot in that ballroom as a guest, even if it was a joke. For 2 years she had cleaned every inch of that mansion, always invisible, always silent, watching the rich treat her like furniture. The invitation had arrived 3 days earlier, delivered with a cruel smile she knew too well. "Charity gala on Saturday," Richard said, handing her a gold envelope. "Dress code maximum elegance. You surely have something suitable in your wardrobe, don't you?" The laughter of his friends echoed through the hallway. It was an obvious trap, a plan to humiliate her in front of the California elite. Richard had even invited social reporters to document what he called an educational moment. "Let's make a bet," Richard said to his wife Helena as Victoria vacuumed the day before. $100,000 she doesn't have the nerve to show up. And if she does, she'll be the entertainment of the evening. Helena laughed. "You're terrible, Richard. The poor thing will probably come in something borrowed and leave within 15 minutes. But Richard didn't know 2 important things about Victoria. First, she had grown up in halls like that long before she had to clean them. Second, some storms don't destroy you, they teach you how to dance in the rain. As she walked through the hall under mocking glances, Victoria kept her posture straight and her gaze calm, like someone carrying secrets powerful enough to flip that world upside down. Her steps were steady, calculated, almost like a choreography. "My God, she really came," whispered Patricia Weston, the senator's wife. "And look at her dress. Where did she get that?" "She probably rented it and will take 10 months to pay for it," Vivian Chambers replied, trying to hide her own insecurity with cruelty. What none of them knew was that Victoria hadn't bought, borrowed, or rented that dress. She had simply retrieved it from her past, a past Richard would have done anything to erase if he had known it existed. Richard approached her with arrogance, surrounded by billionaire friends. "Victoria, what a pleasant surprise. I knew you'd come. After all, when a person like you receives an invitation to an event like this." "A person like me," Victoria repeated, her calm voice slicing through the air. "Go on, Richard, finish your sentence." For a tiny moment something in her tone made him hesitate, but pride took over again. "Well, someone who doesn't normally belong in this environment. You must be feeling intimidated by all this elegance." Victoria smiled. Not nervously but with a dangerous serenity that made several guests fall silent. "Intimidated," she repeated softly, her eyes locking with his until he stepped back without noticing. "No, Richard. I feel exactly where I've always belonged." The atmosphere shifted. Something about her presence didn't match the meek woman they thought she was. Richard cleared his throat. "Well, enjoy the evening. It will be educational for you." "Oh, I'm sure it will be educational for all of us," Victoria replied, scanning the room as if memorizing every face. "Everyone," Richard announced loudly, tapping his glass. "I'd like to introduce our special guest tonight, Victoria. Our dedicated cleaning lady." Laughter exploded. People took out their phones, snapping photos with mocking captions. Victoria stood motionless in the center, but instead of shame there was serenity, the kind found in those who have survived far worse storms. Her group of friends approached, all wearing poisonous smiles. "Victoria, dear, tell me, how long did it take you to choose that dress? It must have been so challenging to find something suitable." "Actually," Victoria replied with a calmness that made Patricia hesitate, "this dress has a very special history. It belonged to my mother." "Her mother?" Vivian Chambers laughed sharply. "And where did her mother get a dress like that? At some fancy thrift store?" Victoria smiled, but there was something dangerous in that smile. "My mother wore this dress the last time she was in a ballroom like this. That was 20 years ago, when she was still Victoria Thames Blackwood." The silence that followed was deafening. Conversations died instantly as people realized something important had just been revealed. Richard, who had been laughing with his friends, turned slowly. "What did you say?" "Thames Blackwood, Victoria repeated, her voice slicing through the air. Funny how some people choose to forget their own family history. Richard's face began to drain of color. Helena instinctively grabbed his arm, sensing danger. You're delirious, Richard said, trying to sound firm but failing. I don't know what game you're playing, but this isn't a game, Richard. Victoria stepped toward him, and several guests stepped back in fear. It's history. Our history. The history you tried to erase when you decided it was convenient to pretend certain people in our family never existed. Cell phones continued to record, but now for a completely different reason. Whispers spread like wildfire. What is she talking about? Helena whispered, shaking. She's lying, Richard insisted, though his hands trembled. She's a deranged employee trying to get attention. Victoria opened her purse and pulled out a small object. Gasps echoed through the hall. It was the Blackwood family engagement ring. The sapphire, the crest, the unmistakable design passed down for generations. This ring, Victoria said, holding it up, was given to my mother by her father, Henry Blackwood. My grandfather. The same man you told everyone died without an heir. Richard staggered. Where did you get this? How dare you steal? You can't steal something that already belongs to you by birthright, Victoria replied coldly. Patricia Weston whispered, Oh my God, do you think she's telling the truth? Impossible, Vivian murmured, but her voice shook. Richard would have told us if he had a cousin. Victoria turned her gaze toward them. Cousin? No, dear, I'm not Richard's cousin. She paused, looking directly at Richard. I'm his half-sister. The room exploded with gasps and murmurs. Richard looked as if lightning had struck him. This is ridiculous, he shouted, but his voice cracked. My father would never. Henry Blackwood had an affair with my mother Isabella for 5 years, Victoria continued. She was the family's piano teacher. When she discovered she was pregnant, your father promised to take care of us. And he did. Until he died. Helena covered her mouth, horrified. Her eyes darted between them as if watching a slow disaster. You, Victoria said, pointing directly at Richard, decided to pretend we didn't exist. You ended our allowance, sold the house your father bought for us, and left us in poverty. I had no obligation, Richard began. You had no obligation to take care of your father's family. Interesting, considering you inherited 100% of a fortune meant to be divided between us. Guests slowly backed away from Richard as if he carried a disease. Prove it, Richard said desperately. Anyone can make up a story and bring a ring. Victoria smiled, predatory and calm. Do you really think I came here without proof? She raised her hand toward the entrance. They can come in now. 3 people walked into the hall, and with them came the collapse of Richard Blackwood's world. Diane Morrison, Beverly Hills' most respected investigative journalist. David Chun, an inheritance lawyer. And last, Dr. Hamilton, the family's private physician. Dr. Hamilton stepped forward. His hands trembled but his voice was steady. 20 years ago, I was forced to sign a falsified death certificate. Henry Blackwood did not die of natural causes. He was slowly poisoned with arsenic over months. The room erupted in horror. Diane Morrison raised her voice, asking guests to keep their phones down because the confession was being recorded officially. Richard began sweating. You're crazy. My father died of heart problems. Your father found out about the money you were embezzling, Dr. Hamilton continued. He changed his will to include Victoria and was preparing to report you. That's when he suddenly became ill. Victoria stood silent, tears gathering in her eyes. After 20 years, the truth was finally being spoken. David Chun opened his briefcase and lifted a document. An independent lab tested Henry Blackwood's preserved blood sample last week. The arsenic levels were fatal. This is a conspiracy, Richard yelled, his voice cracking. You're trying to destroy me. Diane Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Blackwood, I have transcripts of 5 conversations between you and Dr. Hamilton where you threatened to ruin him if he revealed anything. Victoria's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Richard, you didn't just kill our father. You stole 20 years of my life. I didn't kill anyone, Richard shouted, pointing wildly. You're all lying. Then explain this, Victoria said, connecting her phone to the mansion speakers. A recording played. Richard's voice echoed through the hall. Hamilton, you keep your mouth shut about anything strange you found. If you talk, I'll end your career. And that woman and her bastard daughter can fend for themselves." A suffocating silence fell. People backed away from Richard as if he were radioactive. Helena stared at him with horror. "Richard, you really did this?" 20 years, Victoria said, her voice trembling with rage. 20 years. Cleaning my own father's blood off the hands of his killer was the moment I vowed to fight back. Victoria took a deep breath and regained her deadly calm. "You want to know how I got all this evidence? I didn't come to work here by accident. I applied for this job on purpose. I spent 2 years preparing, gaining access to this house, collecting every piece of proof I needed." Richard attempted one last desperate move. "Even if that's true, it doesn't matter. The inheritance was settled years ago." David Chun smiled for the first time. "Actually, Mr. Blackwood, when murder is involved, all assets can be redistributed according to the original will. And we have Henry Blackwood's real will." Victoria stepped toward Richard, who now leaned against the wall like a trapped animal. "Do you know what my biggest mistake was, Richard? Believing you would ever change on your own." "Please," Richard whispered. His arrogance was gone. "Helena, the children, this will destroy our family. You destroyed our family the moment you chose money over justice." Richard collapsed into an armchair, defeated. His fall from arrogant millionaire to exposed criminal had taken less than 2 hours. Victoria looked at him one last time. He was broken, and it was only the beginning. Richard had no idea that Victoria had collected evidence not only about their father's murder, but about every financial crime, every bribe, every act of corruption he had committed over the years. She had woven a web of justice so precise that his downfall would be absolute. The next 2 hours turned the most exclusive gala in Beverly Hills into the biggest scandal California high society had ever witnessed. Richard was now sitting on the floor of the ballroom, back against the wall, watching his life fall apart piece by piece. Diane Morrison connected her laptop to the mansion's projector. Documents, photos, recordings appeared on the giant screen, each one another nail in Richard's coffin. "This is a bank transfer of $200,000 from Richard Blackwood's personal account to Dr. Hamilton, 3 days after Henry Blackwood's death," Diane narrated. The memo reads, "Silence is golden." Helena stood far away from her husband, crying silently as she processed 20 years of lies. "And this," Diane continued, "is a recording of Richard telling his accountant how to hide the company's embezzlement." Richard's voice filled the room. "I need you to make the numbers dance. If anyone finds out I took 20 million over the last 5 years, I'm ruined. Blame it on market fluctuations or expansion costs. I don't care." Patricia Weston whispered, "My God, he stole from his own company." Victoria stood calm in the center of the chaos, watching as each revelation systematically dismantled the man who murdered her father. David Chun approached with another folder. "Mr. Blackwood, in addition to criminal charges, Miss Thames is filing a $50 million civil lawsuit for wrongful death and theft of inheritance." $50 million. Richard stared with empty eyes. "I don't have $50 million. No," Victoria said softly. "But your company is worth $120 million, and half of it has always been mine." Diane continued the presentation. "We also have evidence that Richard blackmailed 5 politicians, bribed 3 judges, and diverted charity funds into private accounts." Gasps spread through the room. Richard's friends now avoided him like a dangerous animal. "Victoria," Richard whispered, "please. You got what you wanted. Stop." Victoria knelt in front of him, looking directly into his eyes. "Richard, you killed our father. You stole my family, my inheritance, my dignity. You made me clean his blood off your hands for 2 years. I can make it up to you," he whispered hopelessly. "There is no making up for 20 years of injustice," Victoria said with chilling calm. "There are only consequences." Helena's phone rang. One of their children was calling from college. "Mom, is everything okay? Is it true what they're saying online? Is Dad a murderer?" Helena looked at Richard with pure disgust. "Even your children are learning who you are from social media." Richard tried to stand but his legs buckled. "Helena, please. The children." "No." Helena's scream silenced the entire ballroom. "You don't get to mention our children. You've shamed them forever." Dr. Hamilton approached Victoria. "Miss Thames, I have already contacted the police. Richard will be arrested later today for murder." Victoria nodded. "Murder, fraud, blackmail, tax evasion. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. She turned to the guests watching her with shock and awe. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it for justice. For every person trampled by men like Richard Blackwood. Patricia Weston stepped forward nervously. Victoria, we're so sorry. We didn't know. You knew how I was treated, Victoria replied. You laughed. You joined in. The only difference now is that you've learned I have more money than you. Sirens echoed from outside. The police had arrived. Richard looked at Victoria one last time. You've destroyed my life. No, Victoria said, standing tall. You destroyed your own life when you chose evil. I only revealed the truth. The police entered and arrested Richard. As they led him through the same hall where he had once mocked her, Victoria stepped onto the balcony. Outside, dozens of reporters waited with cameras and microphones. The story had already spread everywhere. Helena joined her, trembling. Victoria, I swear I didn't know anything. I know, Victoria said gently. You were his victim too. What happens now? Victoria gazed at the glittering city below. Now, Helena, justice will finally be served. And maybe Beverly Hills will understand that class has nothing to do with money. As Richard was taken away in handcuffs, passing through the ruins of the life he built on lies, Victoria felt something she had not felt in 20 years. Years of peace followed. What Richard would discover in the next few hours in jail was that Victoria had planned every detail not only of his downfall but also of the complete rebuilding of her own life, and that the Blackwood Empire now had a new heir who would use that power to protect exactly the kind of people he used to trample on. 6 months later, Victoria Temps Blackwood sat in Richard's former office, now completely transformed. The walls that once displayed trophies of arrogance now held certificates from social projects and photos of employees who had risen from entry-level positions to executive roles. Richard had been sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The charges included murder, corporate fraud, blackmail, and tax evasion. His personal fortune was confiscated to compensate the people he had harmed. Victoria was only one among many victims whose lives he had damaged. Miss Temps Blackwood, said Amanda, Victoria's new executive assistant who once worked as a cleaner in the same building. Forbes magazine is here for the interview about the company's transformation. Victoria smiled. In just 6 months, she had increased the company's profits by 40% simply by treating employees like human beings. Fair wages, merit-based promotions, and a respectful environment had created a level of productivity Richard never achieved with his toxic leadership. Helena had divorced Richard instantly and moved out of state with her children. Before leaving, she came to Victoria to apologize. You could have destroyed us completely, but you chose to protect my children. I will never forget your kindness. Children don't pay for their parents' sins, Victoria had replied. They deserve a chance to become better than he ever was. Dr. Hamilton now worked as a medical consultant for the company, offering free care to all employees. I never thought I'd have the courage to do the right thing, he told Victoria. You taught me it's never too late to find dignity. Patricia Weston and Vivian Chambers tried to reconnect with Victoria in the weeks after the scandal, but she kept them at a polite distance. You mocked me when you thought I was beneath you. Now you want my friendship because you learned about my bank balance. That says everything about you. Victoria's story had gone viral around the world. She received invitations to speak about leadership and justice, but she preferred real work. I don't want to be famous for suffering, she said in a rare interview. I want to be known for what I built afterward. The company now funded scholarships for employees' children, launched a microcredit program for small entrepreneurs, and created the largest domestic violence support fund in California. One quiet afternoon, Victoria received a letter from prison. It was from Richard. Victoria, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that you showed me what I became. A monster. I spend every day trying to understand how I turned into someone capable of killing his own father for money. My children asked about you on their last visit. They want to meet the aunt who protected the family when their father failed. Victoria kept the letter without responding. Forgiveness was a personal journey, but justice had already been served. During the Forbes interview, the journalist asked, "Some people say what you did was too cruel. What do you say to that?" "Revenge would have been doing to him what he did to me," Victoria replied calmly. Justice is making sure he pays for his crimes and ensuring others never suffer what I suffered. There is a fundamental difference. And what advice would you give to people facing similar injustice? Victoria looked outside at the employees having lunch in the garden that now represented dignity and respect. The best revenge is not destroying the people who hurt you. It is building something so great that the injustice you endured becomes only the first chapter of a story of triumph. That night, Victoria returned home, not to the small apartment where she once dreamed of justice, but to a warm house where she had adopted 2 orphan children who, like her, needed a second chance. As she helped the girls with their homework, she thought of the father she never truly knew, but whose blood still lived in her. Henry Blackwood would be proud to see that his daughter not only reclaimed what was stolen from her but transformed a company built on exploitation into a symbol of opportunity and dignity. Victoria's true victory was not dethroning Richard. It was proving that when you build power on justice instead of fear, that power grows and benefits everyone around you. Richard tried to humiliate a cleaning lady, and instead discovered that he had underestimated an angel. More importantly, he learned that dignity cannot be bought, inherited, or stolen. It is earned through the choices we make when no one is watching. If this story of justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that good always wins when you have the right strategy and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone chooses to ignore.